Lacrosse community. My name is Ryan Berns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills you gain from the sport, to ultimately live your best life possible. Today, we're joined by Michael Leahy. We're so excited for this conversation because he's been coached by some of the best coaches of all time in lacrosse. He's making a huge impact right now at Woodberry Forrest School, which is awesome. And he has a really unique club team as well that they've been coaching. So Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. For those in our community that aren't quite aware of you and how you got into lacrosse, can you share a little bit about your story? So how you found lacrosse and maybe share about your first coach that you had.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Ryan. This is an exciting opportunity to speak with you today. I guess my first time and first opportunity to play lacrosse was when my father came home with one of those old plastic sticks. Actually, the head and the mesh were still plastic. And I remember thinking, what is this thing? I was really into basketball and baseball at the time, and he rolled in with that. And the rest is kind of history. I was lucky enough to grow up in central New York. I went to West Genesee High School. When I was growing up, there was a summer league at Shove Park, which is somewhat legendary, at least it was. And then had an opportunity to play for Mike Messer, who I would argue is, probably the best high school lacrosse coach of all time. There are probably a few guys out there, or very few guys out there, that have coached over 40 years and lost 80 games, 82 games maybe, over a 40-plus year career. And then from there on to the University of Virginia, where I played for Dom Starsia, who at one point was one of the winningest college coaches of all time. And so, and then, I was lucky enough when I was at Virginia to actually play with a couple of guys. One who you've had on here before, Mark Van Arsdale was an assistant there, Mike Murphy, who's the current head coach at Penn, and a guy named Chris Colbeck, who is now the head coach at the Memphis University School in Memphis, Tennessee. So all four of those guys have been instrumental in, kind of my development. And I guess I would be remiss not to mention Bob Deegan, who was Mike Messer's longtime head coach or assistant coach, coached in the PLL for a year or two, actually with Dom. So that was kind of exciting to see those guys match up when the PLL first kicked off. So yeah, that's kind of my background. And all of those guys, as I mentioned, have kind of played a pivotal role in me exploring coaching as a career path.
It's so cool to hear all these names of coaches that we've all heard of in Arizona and across the world, and to be able to have the firsthand experience with them, it has to be unparalleled. Do you have any highlights over your lacrosse career? What are some of those pinnacle moments that really stick out to you?
Yeah, I've thought about this a little bit based on some of our previous, conversations, and I'd like to say that I haven't hit the pinnacle yet, but I don't think that that's fair to say. There's been, certainly moments throughout. In my high school career, we lost 3 games my sophomore year, and then we didn't lose another game my junior and senior year. So kind of moving on to that in, playing in the top highest class, I guess, if you will, in New York State. We went 24-0 my junior and senior year. I'll never forget it. We played Maryland my freshman year in college, and we lost up in College Park, and I was, in borderline tears on the sidelines, and guys were like, dude, what is wrong with you? And I was like, we lost. Like, I wasn't really used to losing. And so I had to get not necessarily accustomed to that, but understand that that's going to happen from time to time. And then, we lost in the national championship in overtime to Princeton, which was the start of their great run, their 3-year run. And then my senior year, maybe kind of the pinnacle would have been beating Syracuse in the national championship, contributing in that game. I having grown up in Syracuse and knowing everybody on that team, and the coaching staff actually were all West Genny guys. John Desco and Kevin Donahue were all guys that grew up coaching me. and where I played against in the summer at Show Park. And so, having that opportunity to win a national championship was certainly exciting. And then, to kind of bookend it to where we are today, to kind of live the life in the financial services world and, taking a step back and moving to Central Virginia with my family and taking over the program here at Woodberry Forrest. There's probably two moments that stick out. One of them would have been my first game this year where we played St. Christopher's here. And we happened to win. And that was my first game ever as a head coach. The last time we played St. Christopher's prior to that was, I think the number was 700 days prior to that. And we lost 19-2 here on campus. And we actually pulled out a victory 8-7. And then, and then moving on, we lost in the state quarterfinals, but we got a playoff win under our belt. And so, it was a pretty exciting first year for me. And I think, ultimately kind of building a program and hopefully moving it in the right direction.
Well, Mike, I love hearing that your pinnacle isn't quite there on the coaching side of things, but it seems like you've got there on the playing side. How do you go about building up your team and going 700 days between game and game and ultimately being victorious?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was lucky enough to have the headmaster here kind of reach out and say, look, you can come down for the spring season and be an assistant coach and kind of get a lay of the land, or you can come down in July and just kind of, hit the ground running. And I decided to move my family down here in the middle of the year and be an assistant coach and have an idea to kind of see what the identity was and have an idea of who I had coming back and, basically kind of see what we did and didn't do and frankly, just kind of build off of that. I was lucky enough to have a group of seniors my first year. We obviously didn't have a season because of COVID, but I had a group of guys that were ready to lead and make the right decisions and do it without, any sort of pretense. It was one of those things like, you're at a boarding school and it's all boys and, there's this hierarchy here. I had to get rid of that. I had to tell those guys that, look, once you cross the line, once you step into the ring, it doesn't matter whether you're a freshman or a senior, how you perform out here and how you act out here and how you act in the community really is what matters most to me. I don't care how old you are. How are you going to contribute to this program and this community is what is going to matter most. And kind of getting that message across to these guys was probably the most important thing that I could do right off the bat. And I think that the guys, again, I had as senior leaders last year, did an incredible job setting the standard for the guys that were ultimately going to be leaders for us this year.
Awesome. And it sounds like setting an example is such a big part of leadership, but how else do you identify leaders, or what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah. It's your ability and your desire and your willingness to do things when people aren't looking. And it's, I'm down there on the field working out with guys all the time in the mornings, but there was a few guys, and I remember this vividly, really, it was that we had at the time who was starting for us. And he was down on the field when I was here as an assistant every morning. And I remember going out to get my coffee and being like, man, it's cold out. And he was down there working out. And I didn't really know, what was going on or who he really was. And then it eventually, I was like, this guy's going to be our leader. And at the time he caught a little bit of flack, right? Like, it wasn't that cool to wake up early and go down there when it was 30 degrees, outside and there was frost on the field. And I kind of had to nip that little, issue, I guess, in the bud a little bit. And it was him who set the standard for people. All of a sudden, he wasn't the only one down there working out. And it was his ability and his desire and his willingness to do the little things when people weren't watching. And I would get a call from a teacher. I'd get an email from a teacher. Hey, Dawson was late for class again today. And I was like, okay, I got it. Sorry. We'll get him to class on time. And so we fixed that. And, there's certainly been a level of excitement, but for me, the leadership side of things is the ability to kind of do the little things when people aren't watching.
Integrity is what comes up to me when you talk about doing the things when no one's watching, making sure that you're making good choices over and over and over and over again, because ultimately they compound on it one another. And then that's where you do see that success and where you see it at the next level. From your vantage point as a national championship player, and then now as a coach, what does it take in terms of setting a standard, or what do the players have to do? What can you do to really make sure that you have that excellent culture?
That's a great question. And the word that I use all the time is being accountable. I want you to be accountable. I want me to be accountable. I want you as an athlete to be accountable. I want my assistant coaches to be accountable. And it starts with doing the little things. And I guess I would share this with you. We lift in the mornings in the winter, and it's cold again, right? It's not too early, but it's 6 o'clock, 6:15, and you're at boarding school, and a lot of these guys would rather stay in bed. And we kind of set the culture of like, look, we expect you to be there. You are accountable to be there. If you would like to be a varsity lacrosse member, this is what is expected of you. And it got to the point where, I'd get an email at 11 o'clock at night. Hey, coach, I'm not going to be able to make it, to the lift tomorrow. I have a big math exam tomorrow. I said, that's totally fine. Right. And so those guys wouldn't show up, and let's just say it's a Tuesday. And so on Thursday, Wednesday night, I get the same kind of email. And then next thing you know, though, guys started to show up at our morning lifts with their backpacks on, and they would sit in our athletic director's office and study. And so while those guys weren't going to be there for the lift, they were going to be in there with their teammates studying. And so I had no problem with that. Of course, academics is first, but these guys were like, look, coach, we made a promise to you. We made a promise to ourselves, and so we will be there when the lift happens. And that's when I kind of, thought to myself, first of all, I don't know if I would have done that. But second of all, maybe we got something here. These guys are holding themselves accountable, right? Great coaches can win games. There's a great quote, and I'm going to butcher it, right? But great coaches can win games. But, when the players start to hold themselves accountable, that's when you start to develop something really special. And I think that's when I started to think, maybe we have something here.
That's such a cool thing to see, especially if they took that on themselves. That's showing another level of discipline or accountability or whatever it is. And it's the idea that you have a dream or a goal, and you're willing to do everything that it takes to ultimately get there.
Yeah.
Now, do you share stories with the guys, or how do you go about being a leader, or how have you gone about helping these guys lead in the face of adversity and challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And so I do share some stories from time to time with these guys, and it's not as relevant, but it does, matter. When I was a senior at Virginia, these guys are all underage, right? But when I was a senior, there was something missing, right? When we were trying to make our run, we knew we were talented enough. Maybe we weren't the most talented team. We certainly weren't the most talented team that I played on at Virginia. Thinking about my freshman and sophomore years, we had guys like Tim Whiteley, Michael Watson, Doug Knight, guys who were total studs. And we never won one. When we got into the playoff run, so the ACC tournament and into the NCAA tournament, we decided that we weren't going to party. We weren't going to drink. We weren't going to do anything that would affect our performance on the field. And that may seem like, something minor, but when you're in college, it's hard. And so we made a commitment to ourselves that we weren't going to do any of that. And it may not have mattered, but it's hard not to believe that it didn't. And so that's one of those stories of shared sacrifice that I will share with these guys all the time. And so in addition to that, I guess it's, it is the daily grind here. We're at an all boys boarding school. the days are long, the nights are even longer sometime. And so the shared sacrifice of just getting up early, from time to time, we'll go down. We've got an indoor athletic facility. The guys will go down there and play lacrosse in the mornings, and, just to show up, right? It's just showing up that matters. And as, to kind of just go back to that example of being in the weight room that early in the morning, half the battle, right, is just showing up, getting yourself out of bed and being present, and then just kind of following the guys who've done it before.
I think we're going down a path that I really like in terms of just showing up, or what it takes to be successful. Is it just showing up, or what else do we have to do as human beings to be successful and reach our own pinnacles?
Yeah, so it's you have to have goals, right? You have to set standards. And I hate to keep harping on this, right? But I kind of thought I would. But the accountability piece to this is ultimately what matters. And I want these guys to hold me accountable too. If I'm even remotely late or brushing up against go time for a practice, like I expect those guys to, hold me accountable. I want them to call me out for walking in with my cup of coffee and not being ready to lift in the morning. I'll show up with those guys to lift in the morning. And so, again, to kind of just hark on back onto the accountability piece, I want everyone in the program to be held accountable. And it's not necessarily on the lacrosse side of things, because so many times, we kind of just say, hey, down in the field, right? And this was one thing that Coach Messer, pushed on us hard when we were growing up, right? We didn't wear hats. We certainly didn't wear hats backwards. But we were good members of the community. We had to be. And if we weren't willing to be a good member of the community, then being part of the program wasn't going to be part for us. And, I had, when I was my first year, I guess, as the varsity coach, we had a couple of guys that were, on the fence, really, as far as being a member and a good member of the community. And so I had to have a conversation with 4 or 5 guys and say, look, here's the deal. You haven't been to a lift. I'm hearing some things that maybe you're not living up to the standard that we want. And if you don't turn it around, it's going to be difficult for you to make the squad. And when the spring tryouts came around, and 2 guys kind of stepped up their game and 2 guys kind of fell back. And we didn't even really have to cut them, which was a blessing, I guess, in disguise. But I try to have conversations with these guys at the outset of our school year, so that they understand that if they want to be part of this program, especially at the varsity level, you need to act like a varsity level community member.
I love that. Just expectations. You need to make sure that everyone has those, because if the expectations aren't met, ultimately someone gets upset. And what's coming up for me is just John Gordon, his book, The Energy Bus, and think that everyone has to be on the same page. We all have to be going in the same direction. And if someone's straggling or not necessarily going in the same way, that derails everyone. So to be able to have that conversation up front is so vital. And it's nice that 2 of the members were able to step up, and the other 2, unfortunately, they don't get that experience. But as a leader and a coach, I think that's just so important. Can you talk a little bit more about priorities, though? Because you talked about being a good member of the community. You've talked about academics, but what are some of the other priorities or values that you preach to the boys?
Yeah, so I hate to keep coming back to it, but it's the accountability piece, it's the commitment piece, it's the being a good member of the community piece. I mean, here, especially at Woodberry, right, we've got 400 dudes, and this isn't a plug. This is just we've got 400 guys, right? And so they're the largest constituents of this community. And so for me, it's how do you speak to people? How do you act? How do you interact with adults? I have, a rising freshman coming in here. I also have a teenage daughter who's going into 8th grade, and I have a 6-year-old. How do you treat them, right? Do you treat them with respect? Do you say hello? Do you just brush them off? Those things are the most important to me. I tell these guys all the time, look, I left the financial services world. I changed paths completely to move down here, and I'm going to do it the right way with you guys. So you're either in or you're out, and that's totally cool with me. but it's the character and it's the commitment. I got sucked into this recent video by that was Greg Carvel, who was the UMass hockey coach recently. And one of the things he preached was character over skill. And I'm all about that. And I almost watch this video every day. It is something that I absolutely preach. And if there is a problem, I have these conversations ahead of time so that these guys understand that that's the standard. And so it's the accountability and it's the character thing, again, to just more or less above all else.
Well, how you do some things, how you do everything. So if you're able to respect others, respect yourself, that gains self-confidence. And ultimately, we see it on the field. I mean, as coaches, unfortunately, we don't get a pass and throw and catch anymore. All we have to do is hope that all our training up until that point paid off and put in the hands of the boys.
Yep. Without a doubt. I say it to these guys all the time. I mean, as coaches, we kind of laugh, like, we think we would have made a certain play or whatever, but we just have to, it's being prepared, right? Like we have to prepare these guys, to be in these certain situations and how they react. And so we can't do it for them, unfortunately.
I wish we could, but these guys are all, and girls who are in similar situations, they're all in primes of their lives. They're gaining skills that are going to relate to the real world ultimately when they step off the field, whether it's after high school or after college. You get a bunch of experiences that you can get in other sports, but I think just sports do a great job of paralleling life and the challenges that you face. And ultimately, if you can figure out how to do it on the field, you can face it in life and have the confidence to overcome that. Have you seen that relate to your own life in terms of adversity on the field to now you're able to do it in other aspects, whether it was professionally in the financial services or in coaching? And can you share a little bit about that, Mike?
Yeah. So, the adversity on the field, I guess it's probably eating the humble pie, having come in here my first year as an assistant coach, thinking candidly I was going to, be able to turn things around right away. I mean, I showed up, 2 weeks before the season started and we went 4-15 my first year here. I mean, it was bad. And this isn't a knock on anything other than just, it was bad. And it was, I don't want to say it was a culture thing, but there were some things culturally that we needed to change. And candidly, we needed some new leaders on our team. And so, I got in here right away during tryouts. There were a couple guys that got in trouble here at school. And I candidly just walked up to him and I was like, look, like, I know I'm only the assistant coach now, but if this happens again, you guys are gone. And they couldn't believe me. Looked at me like I had two heads, and I said, "Look, no, I'm serious. You are you're impacting more people than you can possibly imagine by your actions right now." And so we had one guy that kind of decided to just pout about it, and we had one guy who decided that he wanted to kind of go in the other direction. And so it's really interesting, right? Like, those adverse moments that you have with these guys, they are the moments where you either decide to grow or you retrench a little bit. And what I need to do candidly a better job of is, in those moments when these guys, either excel or retrench, I need to continue to grab those guys who kind of backed off a little bit and bring them back up with me. And, that's something that I need to do a better job of. I think I'm doing a better job of it, but it is adversity, dealing with that and then having to kind of, stay constructive, stay positive, build on, the small victories each day in every practice. Like, if you had asked me 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, if I would have played music at practice, I would have said, no way. I'm now a huge fan of music at practice. I like to dance, get everybody going, get everybody loose and have fun with it at the beginning of practice. If we need to cut it, we cut it. But, we try to keep things loose, but also pay attention to detail. So, the adversity side of things was probably eating my humble pie, recognizing that I'm not going to turn things on a dime, go 4-15 my first year here.
Well, it would be nice to do that, and I think we all need to eat our humble pie, and that's another way. If you think you're going to be a starter and you don't quite get there as a freshman, there's probably a reason. So you
Yeah.
gotta eat, that quick. But I love to hear that you're actively growing and identifying where are opportunities in yourself, because I'm sure that goes to the players as well, and they think of how can we continuously improve. Mike, just one last question, since I know we're running up on time. Do you have any last thoughts or comments that you'd like to share with our community today?
No, well, I guess I would say this, just continue to grind, and I would say it's never too late to pick up a stick. I remember vividly moving to Boston. We moved to Boston 7 years ago. My kids were 7 or 8 years old at the time. And somebody up there said, and this isn't a knock, by the way, I totally get it now, but like somebody said, wow, you must feel like it's too late to put your kids into hockey. And I was like, what do you mean? Like they're 7 or 8 years old. But you hear that a lot. Like I'm drawing a parallel here to lacrosse because you hear that a lot with lacrosse. And I just don't think it's ever too late, right? I really, truly don't. And especially for kids that are coming up in the middle school level, if you want to be, you can pick up a stick, you can get on a wall, you can shoot, you can work on your footwork, you can get in the weight room, you can be a good teammate. And those things are important, right? Like the culture needs guys, not everybody is going to be an A player, right? So you're going to need to fill in your team with guys who are just good teammates, who want to be part of the program, who believe in the school, who believe in their buddies, who believe in the program. And it's just never too late. So don't ever really think like it's too late to start the grind with lacrosse. And by the way, I'm still playing lacrosse right now. It never really stops. So, you pick up a stick in 7th or 8th grade, my college coach is still playing in Lake Placid. I don't want to say how old he is, but you can continue to play this for the rest of your life and develop friendships that will last a lifetime. Lacrosse has given me so much. You look throughout the college and high school landscape. I mean, there's probably 7 or 8 West Genesee guys that are coaching high level Division I lacrosse. And then if you look at Dom Starsia's coaching tree as well, we've actually kind of half-heartedly talked about putting together a jamboree of guys who coach at the high school level. It's kind of insane. So I would tell you, it's never too late to pick up a lacrosse stick. It's a wonderful sport. So give it a go.
Mike, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you joining this community and sharing your perspective. It's been such a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate your time, man. Have a great day.